Hello, everyone. Welcome into today's Q&A webinar inside our CISO's Playbook, Setting the Stage for 2026, presented by Educate 360's very own CISO, Alexander Tushinsky, and TCM Security's Cybersecurity Master, Andrew Bellini. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I will be assisting and moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you via email after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our dedicated Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today, so without further ado, I will hand it over to you both.
Thank you, Mariella.
Thank you. Bellini, nice to be here. How you doing?
Nice to be here as well, Alex. It's good to catch up with you. And today I'm going to grill you about what you're scared about and and what's on your mind for 2026 as a CISO. So I think we'll kick things off with a big one. What are some things that either keep you up at night or are worrying you or concerning you for cybersecurity in 2026 or going into the new year?
Sure. So, again, my answers are my own sort of personal opinions. I will say that, and different companies have different threats and different things that they, need to worry about. But in my particular case, I'm working on improving, I shouldn't say building, but improving the security program here at Educate 360 and getting us to some third-party certifications like the SOC 2 and ISO 27001. And for the most part, everything, a lot of the processes that are needed for these are in place and working. Some of the things that I do still see and some of the things that keep me up at night are things like AI tools, for example, the meeting note takers that show up and take notes here and there. And the problem with AI used in this capacity is we don't really have control over it. So we don't know how that data is used after the fact. So it's great that it summarizes the meeting. It gives you the actionable steps, all of that. But that data goes somewhere and it's not within our control. And so those things become a bit of a problem. So that's one of the things that kind of keeps me up at night. There are a lot of AI tools today, and I think they're both good and bad. I think there's some hype here around AI, and so more and more we tend to rely on it, and it's not. It's not perfect, and it doesn't have the reasoning skills we think it does, right? It's really a pattern matching tool today, so it's great at certain things, but some of the things that we could end up using it for may backfire because it'll hallucinate or do something wrong in a critical step. So I see a lot of cybersecurity tools in particular starting to leverage it, and so you have to be careful and make sure that the tool is using it for the right purpose and not kind of over embellishing what it's capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think AI security is going to be on the top of minds for a lot of CISOs going into the next year. And there's all the big, scary new AI tools that you're seeing being used for things like phishing. But I know we talked about this before, and it seemed like one of the most dangerous things that we both thought and we're kind of scared about is, employees using unsanctioned AI tools without realizing the risks that take, or just potentially putting businesses out of compliance and getting them in trouble in that way, because there's a lot of free tools just outside of ChatGPT or whatever that pertain to allow you to upload documents or help you with writing tools or things like that. And if they're free, we talked about this, like you might be the product and your data might be the product. So it's not all just the scary attackers using AI. I think a lot of it's going to be those insider threats that are non-malicious, but they're people that don't have the training or understanding of, yeah, what's going to happen with all of my data and how are these tools actually going to perform.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said, if you're building tools around your own private models and,
Yes.
you're basically training this AI on your specific data and it doesn't leave your company or organization. So I think in that case, there's some good use cases there. But
100%.
now you have things like Copilot in Word and in PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a publicly available model. And so, yeah, it's great at helping you figure out what to do with, your contract or the Word document that you're working on, but it sends that data somewhere. And this is
Mhm.
really the same problem I have with tools like Grammarly, which for the
Yes.
longest time you would like, oh yeah, it fixes my punctuations and it fixes my spelling and it does all this magical stuff, but yeah, it sends your data somewhere and you don't know where. You don't really have control over that data once it leaves you. And so let's just say that in a year's time, like Copilot gets breached
Yeah.
and all of this massive amount of data that it's storing leaks somewhere, right? So what is
Mhm.
it really leaking? I mean, it's leaking your internal emails, it's leaking contracts, it's leaking
Yes.
policies. All these things could potentially, come out. And so I'd rather they not be there in the first place if I can avoid
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I know we both agree, like this is both a new problem with AI
Yeah,
tools, but also an old problem because people have been putting work documents or confidential documents in places they shouldn't be. Like, for example, they need to work from home, and there is friction in how they could bring their stuff from home, so they email it to their personal Gmail or their own Google Drive, and now those are out of compliance as well in unsanctioned tools. So
right.
maybe not necessarily, like it's a new problem for AI in some ways, but also that use of it is also something that we've seen before as well. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The other aspect of that is, there's a big push to use AI for coding. And me personally, I've experimented with vibe coding and I've looked at ways that I could leverage it for different things. And it's okay in some areas and it's pretty bad in others. And overall, now it creates a kind of a dangerous world where let's assume you have a business department and they have little or minimal IT help,
mhm.
and they're sitting there and they're going, well, we need to solve this problem, and so they throw it at AI and AI says, oh yeah, here you go, run this script, it'll solve all of your issues. And so now that script becomes part of their everyday,
Mhm.
and it's got problems like unless you're careful and you review all of that code, you don't know what it's doing, what permissions it has, and what is it going to delete, what is it going to keep. And so these other types of things could become a major concern, I think, in 2026. You want to make sure that somehow there's more control around which applications are allowed and which ones are not, and
Yeah.
how those types of scripting engines or scripting, AI technologies are used, if at all.
So do you have any tips for CISOs or IT managers or whoever is going to be in charge of security and what they can do, from now on in 2026 to help prepare their workplace for these new AI threats, and especially the insider threats of employees using these tools?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I think you have to have a clear set of policies around the use of AI. And I'm not saying that you need to say, well, no AI, like forget
Yeah.
it. No, you need to, if it's kind of like everything else we do in IT and cybersecurity, right? Like take third-party libraries and components that we use
Yeah.
as part of our software. It's not like we pick one out of a hat off the internet, plug it into our software and go. right? It goes
Absolutely.
through a vetting process. It goes through a process where we look at the vendor, look at their history, look at how well
Yeah.
they work, what they're releasing and how frequently. All those things come into play. Look to see if
Yes.
there's any incidents against them. So essentially, what I'm saying is, AI requires some level of due diligence. It's not
Yep.
a free tool that's out there. It's a tool that we need to have some control over.
Sure.
So policies is that first line of defense, and then as you evaluate and approve tools for use, you could roll them out to your business users, to your environment, and gauge how well they're working. And
100%.
security is iterative, right? So you start somewhere, you crawl, walk, run, right?
Yep.
So you get something out there, and maybe the policy is not perfect, maybe your process isn't perfect, but you keep iterating through it, and it'll improve over time. So, but start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this goes back to the new problem, but not a new problem, right? Because all businesses should have an acceptable use policy, and whether or not they're allowed to install their own software, there should be a procedure for requesting permission or getting IT to do that. So we're just adding AI and AI tools to that policy, whatever it be, and also the training component that goes along with that to let people know that, hey, you might not realize this, but when you're using AI tools, and especially unsanctioned ones, like, you're putting our company at risk. Because I think a lot of people, if they're not in the tech world or in cybersecurity, they may not understand the risks involved. So that
Right.
user awareness or security awareness, and adding that to it along with your other policies, yeah, I think that is an excellent suggestion. So
I mean, there's another aspect of that, right? Like, we're building tools that use AI, right? So a great use case, and something that I see all the time, is like chat bots, right? Like, it's the first line of defense for support. And from a developer perspective, I think there's some training that needs to go into that as well, because let's say you create a chat bot, and that chat bot is able to, it trains on your data, and all of a
yeah,
sudden somebody asks it a question, and it spits out a whole bunch of confidential stuff that it isn't really supposed to talk about. So
yeah,
that's another big part of it. And I don't think there's any, like, security, or I'm not even sure what to call it, right? AI training for developers. I think they're like, oh yeah, there's a
yeah.
model, and how do you even test something that can give you a different answer when you ask it the same question multiple times, right? So you have to be very sure about what your chat bot, or your AI tools are actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny you're talking about that. I have been developing a chatbot actually for a training at TCM Security that is, I wouldn't even say intentionally insecure, but it is not secure on its own. I have levels of security built into it, like, for the AI itself to monitor. But yeah, on its own, it's using a third party model as the back end LLM. And on its own, there, you cannot trust them for security. You're right. You have limited control over what it could spit out, and on their own, they cannot be trusted to be secure. So you need to do similar to what you would do for other, applications. You need to do input filtering, output filtering. You cannot rely on the model and what you've told it, or what you've trained it to do or aligned it to do, to always give answers that are in line with what you would want it to say.
Yeah.
And that could be, yeah, leaking confidential secrets. It's very common now, instead of training your own model, to use, they call RAG, retrieval augmented generation. And it's really good. It actually is a very fast way to get a really good chatbot. And it will be better the more documents and knowledge base and things you give it. Because the way it works is that it does a semantic search on those when someone asks it a question, and it says, oh, yeah, I can read now. I'll go read this whole thing, and now I can answer your question. But it's very easy to, yeah, one internal document in there. And you don't realize, because it's going to then go into a vector database that's not super easy for a human to like read through it all and audit it. And then, yeah, now you've got API keys that someone accidentally put in your Confluence, or, the architecture documents for your web app, or, all these things to slip in. And then the other thing too is just the reputational damage of like, it's your representative, right? So,
Right.
one of the things that you usually test for is to say like, things like I'm an old man. Will that impact how your service is going to be? And ideally your chatbot should act like your customer service star and to say like, no, that's not a problem, right? But do you know what it's going to say to that, and are you going to be able to control that? So yeah, definitely. I think that's a big concern because everyone, is trying to stuff chatbots into everything right now, it seems
Right.
like.
Yeah, and overall, what I'm seeing is, there's less regulation around chatbots and those AI companies, especially this year, than it's been in the past. So before
Yeah.
there was, like at least discussions around, well, we want to limit it, we want to, make sure that it doesn't go crazy. Now, basically, it's kind of the Wild West. So we don't know what we're going to get in the near future, and whether or not there's any recourse for any of these companies, even if they let our data slip,
Yeah.
and to me,
Or
that's a big thing.
yeah. Or what liability and accountability do the businesses have? Because we had a very interesting case. I'm in Canada, and our like somewhat national airline, Air Canada, its chatbot went off script and offered someone free flights and discounts, and then like I think it's still traveling the court system up into like our Supreme Court, our version of Supreme Court, because the earlier court said like, yes, it's your customer service representative. Like you can't just put this thing out here and then it's not like it like did this crazy hallucination. It just like talked to the person and heard that they had problems and offered them free stuff. You guys are liable for that. It's no different if your customer service did. So in Canada, at least, that's currently what's going as the precedent. I mean, it may change, but it kind of does make sense. It does seem a little unfair that they're going to, not use humans and then have this scapegoat of like, oh, the AI said
Yeah,
it's not, we're not, we're not liable. So,
yeah, I agree. I mean, like we just covered a good amount of negatives on AI. I will say that there's, a ton of positives as well, right? I personally, and especially working for an education company, I do use it for learning things and,
mhm.
for like taking certification exams and things of that nature. It's great at quizzing you at, on specific exams. It like recently I did CSSLP, which is a ISC squared
Mhm.
certification for software development security. And so towards the end of my study period, and I didn't study that hard for the exam, but I just used AI to quiz me, hey, give me multiple choice questions on this domain,
Yep.
and tell me when I get the answer wrong, tell me why it's wrong. And yeah, it hallucinates. You can bend it and you can, kind of get it to see your point every now and then. But for the most part, it is accurate for things like that. And that is, I
Yep.
I think, a great use case for AI.
Me
So
too.
for example, a lot of business people, they may have questions around, hey, I just got this email and I'm not sure if this is spam or not. Well, depending on whether or not you could take a picture of your email and post it into this chat, it probably will tell you if this is spam or not. It'll probably be accurate
Yeah.
as well. So, and it may give you good guidance. It may say, hey, I'm not sure, but you should talk to your CISO or somebody before you click on any links
Yeah.
here. So I think there's some merit to some of these things as well. Um,
Perfect. We got some questions coming in here. So I'm going to take this as
sure.
a good one here. So,
Hit me.
uh, do we need to use manners with the AI, or is it not necessary? They say they're half joking. So, I mean, I've got an answer to this. I don't know if you want to go first or what your opinion
I'll
is
give
on
you
this
my
are.
take on it. And I heard this from a friend of mine who's a developer. And I basically watched him, do some prompts and he would
Yep.
ask please and thank you and all of that. He would be really polite with the AI. And I'm like, why? Why are you being that polite? I yell
Mhm.
at my Google screen all the time. I'm like, hey, you didn't
Yeah.
turn on my AC,
Yeah.
And he's like, well, it's the overlord. Eventually it'll remember, right? so, um, so I think overall we're wasting credits or whatever, tokens, whatever you want to call, saying please and thank you. But if it's not a bad thing to be polite to
No.
whatever it is that's helping you. And if we're thinking
Yeah.
of these things as our assistants, then yeah, we should keep that practice.
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating thing to ask people, and I've seen people posting it on LinkedIn and talking about it, and it seems to be very divisive. And people are like, "Yeah, you don't need to. It wastes energy. It's processing." But yeah, in some ways, it does change our own just like mental thinking and like how we're working with it. And words are a very powerful tool, even just like our inner voice, right? How you talk to yourself, how you see yourself, how you use words in reasoning, even without talking, like,
Yeah,
we're constantly. So it can be powerful to, yeah, interact with it like a human. And then also, it will. We talked about how it's pattern matching and picking up on how you're talking to it. So it will change. I mean, it might not be change the facts it gives you, but it's going to change how it talks to you. So
yeah.
depending on, how you're conversationally talking to it. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's completely a waste of energy. So yeah, up to you. I always make that joke too, that yeah, they're going to be our overlords at some point. So good to
Yeah,
be polite to
yeah. I
them.
mean,
So
I think it's worthwhile to be polite to AI.
yeah,
Why not?
yeah, me too. Even if you're not taking that joke of the overlord, I think just like the way that it impacts our own thinking and
Yes,
behavior and stuff is good. But I mean, if you don't want to be, you don't have to be, right? Yeah.
right.
So, and you know, one thing that I've been saying and suggesting to a lot of people is they should take the TCM security course on AI fundamentals. So this is a free course on our free tier. I am a little bit biased because I did create it, but this is a course that teaches you how AI works under the hood without. I've tried to abstract as much of like the fairly complex mathematics and the calculus and linear algebra and matrix to really just dumb down in basic math. But it does explain how they work, how they're trained, how they take a string of words in, which actually just goes in one word at a time, and be able to come up with the next word, right? Or a picture in and be able to understand what it is or classify it. Um, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have taken it, and they said like, this really pulled away the magic of like AI. It reduced some of my fears I had about what's possible because now I understand, under the hood what is happening. So yeah, I have been suggesting to a lot of people to take that, and then I think that like thank you thing will make a lot more sense too as to how it can change things and how we don't need to feel bad though. Like it's
Right.
not, yeah.
So it's
So
it's interesting because once you understand how it works,
yeah,
it'll change your perception of what exactly it's capable of. Because
yes, one
today, and,
hundred
and
percent.
honestly, from a technology perspective, this is the first time we have something out there that we can naturally talk to. Like previous to this, we had nothing that you could do this with, right? You could do some rudimentary things with like the Google and the series, but nothing like this. And so people immediately assume that it's doing some kind of reasoning, that like there's a brain activity behind it, and there really isn't. Like it's really just the volume of data, and it's whatever it came up with. Like a friend of mine, also a developer, says it's like working with kids. Like you can ask the same thing and get two different answers, and he's like, oh yeah, this is child number one and this is child number two. So clearly something behind the scenes switched when I asked, between the times that I asked the same question because I'm not getting the same answer. Like it's
Yeah.
forgetting stuff that it did. Like, it's so there is no specific reasoning. So I absolutely agree with you. I think that's a great course. And, anybody who's using AI should really understand how that works underneath the hood.
Yes. It's 100%. When I started learning this stuff, a lot of stuff clicked, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's good to know what it can and can't do, and is it magic or not? Because it's not,
Right.
right?
And
I
honestly,
mean,
the companies that produce it will make it seem like it is magic when it isn't.
yes,
So,
100%, 100%, 100%. Okay, we got some good questions here. So let's go. Let's take this. We got another one here. So people are asking in the Q&A and in the chat about keeping software up to date. So 100%. That's one of the things we almost always recommend. Very high up at the top is patch your software. So we already talked about this a little bit, Alex, but I think this is a good question for you. Would you comment on the NPM ecosystem issues recently? So for anyone listening, actually, that hasn't heard about that, NPM, the Node package manager, very commonly used package manager for third-party tools in web development. It has recently had some major supply chain attacks to it, including one that was even wormable, which is very scary. So always scary to hear about these supply chain attacks in very widely used open source packages. So this person is asking, what best practices to limit companies to exposure in these supply chain attacks?
Okay, so I mean, I actually supply chain is something that I am keeping an eye on very closely, and it's something
Yep.
that does keep me up at night. And the main reason is that the attacks on supply chain are increasing and increasing, by large numbers. And so to take a step back and explain this, basically every company has a set of dependencies that we use. So those dependencies come in the form of vendors or software components that we get from the internet or services that we use, like Microsoft, Azure, Office 365. Those would be your services. NPM packages, like you mentioned, those would be components that we incorporate into our own software and then re-release that. And then obviously you have vendors for different tasks, like maybe developers and different third parties that perform different tasks. And so one of the things that's key, I think, for all organizations is to make sure you identify all of these vendors, make sure you vet them from a security standpoint. So it's more than just vetting them to make sure that, they're a good fit for the job, but making sure that they have similar or the same practices that your organization has from a security standpoint. And then what you are specifically talking about is software components. And software components, I've always struggled with this, especially as a developer. In my world, it's .NET and NuGet packages, but it's the same exact principle, right?
Yep.
A lot of developers say, "Oh, I need a PDF tool." They'll grab something off the web, they'll plug it into their software, and that becomes now part of this application that they release to production. And really, there isn't a lot of time taken to evaluate that piece of software that they're incorporating in their project. And so you want to make sure that you have a vetting process for these. And it's not just whether or not it has security issues, but also the type of licensing that the component uses, because certain open source licenses force you to open source your production application if
Yep.
the license, if you use this component. Uh,
Yes.
and and obviously you want to make sure that you know the component that you're using. So you should have a private library of components. So this way you're immune to the different attacks of this type. Because if you're getting the components from your own local repository that have been vetted and approved, you know what you're getting and it works. And so you have your own schedule for updating them. It's not
Yeah.
when somebody releases it.
Yeah. I think it's a lot easier said than done. I've
I
also worked
agree with you.
as a developer, and like the world is built on open source tools and packages. So like you mentioned, like a PDF tool or anything, but like with an NPM, like these are libraries that are being imported, right? As like import statements and like,
Yep.
there's so many layers down the line too
Yes.
of like who is using all of these, and there is a very big debate to be had about what corporations that are using these role they play in the security of them, because this was log4j, right? And then npm,
Log4j. Yep. There's
and
also Event Stream, I think, which happened a few years
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
Also an NPM package.
yeah, it's all these libraries. Or we had one, what was it, for SSH, and these are all open source tools that either have malicious packages being added to them, which is starting to be a common tactic,
Yep.
or just really bad security vulnerabilities that are going unpatched, but they're used almost like globally. Like everyone was using Log4j, right? So yeah, it's easy to say, well, and I saw even one comment like ban all open source, but down there's that meme. I don't know if anyone's seen it. There's an XKCD comic, and it's like this whole stack of rocks, and it's like all modern infrastructure that runs the whole world, and then there's this one little tiny pebble at the bottom, and it's like some open source library that is maintained by one person in Nebraska. And like it's a joke, but in some ways it's kind of true. So yeah, definitely a significant challenge for
Yeah.
for
Well,
all
what
of
you
them.
could do to mitigate some of that is, there are, especially now, AI tools and
Yep.
software code review tools that you could use to check what the source code is doing, right? Additionally, there's a concept of a software bill of material, and that picks
Yes.
up every piece of component that you use in your software and the dependencies of the dependencies.
Yes.
And so now you have that full list. And
Yep.
so, if it's 16,000 things, then yeah, I'd start looking at the developers and say, why do we have
Why? Yep.
16,000 things?
100%.
But if it's a manageable number, then we can vet and kind of control that going forward. So it's
Yep.
50 things, right? Let's say we only upgrade them quarterly. That
Mm.
means we pick a version, we vet it, that goes into
Yep.
production, and we don't really
Yep.
have to worry about it until we get closer to that quarterly timeline to
Yes.
see what's next.
Yeah. So we're picking a version. We're not going late, like, import whatever latest.
Right.
We're
We're
just
not doing the
versioning.
latest and greatest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I worked actually as a developer in an organization that was very strict about FOSS, free and open source. And yeah, SBOM for everything, very strict SBOM, and approved open
Yeah.
source packages, version approved. And if you're going to use a new one, then it would go through both a legal review and architecture review for security to make sure that it's going to be compliant in the licensing. Because yeah, just because it's open
Yep.
source, for example, we did not want to be GPL, which is the GNU public license, which means yeah, you got to open source your stuff. Which as an ethical hacker, I actually teach this in one of my courses. That's if you want to go after IoT stuff, it's mostly embedded Linux. There's GPL. They'll put their source codes there, so you don't need to reverse engineer it. So yeah, but yeah, SBOM, and I think that's the best thing is yeah, pick the versions, justify why you need them, review them,
Yeah.
legal compliance and security. Um, and you need the SBOM though. Without the SBOM, you're flying blind.
Yeah, and there's enough tools, free or otherwise, that produce an S-bomb for you pretty easily.
Yeah,
And
100%.
this, by the way, in my opinion, applies to paid tools as well, because it's not
Yes.
just the free components,
Oh yeah,
but you
100%.
could buy off-the-shelf components, and they really fall in the same category.
Absolutely.
Because what was that one? There was a Solar Winds, right?
SolarWinds. I knew you were going to say that.
They had an attack where somebody embedded malware into a piece of software that then went to companies like Microsoft and they used it.
That was a bad one.
Yeah. Orion. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, let's see here. Ooh, this is a good one for us to answer. We got what certificates might you recommend for cybersecurity?
I'll let you take the first stab at that one.
Sure,
My list
absolutely.
is going to be different because I'm more governance and compliance centric. You're more ethical hacker centric. So
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm a little biased on this, and that at TCM we do offer certificates, but I do highly recommend our certificates or any certificates that are practical. Personally, I find that I get the most value out of those, and that's what I see from people getting the most value out of certificates is ones that are actually having you do things that you would be doing in the job that you want that certificate to prove you can do. So at TCM, for example, all of our certifications are practical and designed to, as best as they can, mimic a day in the job, a week in the job of whatever we're saying, you're certified to do. But it's not just TCM that does that style of certifications. There's other ones as well. So personally, I recommend those ones. Or alternatively, there are some certs in the cybersecurity worlds that you really just need to get for some roles. So when people ask me this, I always mention you should pick what job title is your dream job title, or what you're going to go into. Look in your area or remote or wherever you're going to apply at 100 job postings. You probably can find 100 and see what certs they're asking for. Make an Excel document or whatever. And the ones that are at the top of the list, if you see Security Plus, for example, very popular cybersecurity cert on like 75% of them, then you probably have to get that one, regardless of whether you think the value is there. Is you still you need to get it. So either pick ones that are going to force you to learn something, or that you see on the job postings. That's my opinion.
yeah, I agree with you. I will say this, right? When I went to school for my cybersecurity degree, my master's, the course that I was looking forward to the most was the hacking course.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the one I was most disappointed in. And then for years, I'm like, no, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to learn this. And honestly, it's not, I've just come to the realization that like hacking is not for me. So I think a lot of people also go into the cybersecurity field and they say, oh yeah, I'm going to do hacking. I'm going to do hacking.
Yeah.
But I think you really need to step back and look at the different roles that are available because we do have such a broad amount of different roles
Mm-hmm.
and positions that you could take within cybersecurity. So I think that's the first step. And then figuring out which ones are the best search for your particular role. So I totally agree with that. For me, because I do CISO type of stuff and I do for TCM security, I do some consulting here as well. So for me, governance and compliance types of certs are most important. And also because I'm a developer, I like secure code. So I
Yeah.
took the CSSLP recently, the CISSP, the CISM. Those are kind of like the ones that I appreciated and thought they were valuable. They did teach me quite a bit.
All right. Let's see here. Okay. So this is just a follow-up to this one. Some good questions by Charlie here. So are there any free certificates that we recommend which are reputable and desirable by employers? So free is tough for certificates because yeah, when you go the free routes, sometimes they become a little bit less desirable because if they're free, a lot of times there isn't going to be an exam or anything to to prove anything that you didn't just watch all the way through them. So as far as like in that, just putting on your resume, there's none that I can think of that are that gonna. But there are free courses and where you can get certifications of completion. We have 6 of them now at TCM. Where the big thing that's going to make you stand out, I think, from those is not having that certificate of completion because realistically anyone could just hit play and watch through. It's that you've gained those skills and maybe you've wrote a blog about it or you have something to talk about when you get into an interview. So that's my opinion on those. Yeah. Do you know of any, Alex, that are free that you think are?
No, not off the top of my head. I think it's just a question of experience. The certifications, the way I use them is less about the fact that they're on my resume, but more about what I learned out of it. Like, what was I missing?
Yeah,
Like I might know 60%, 70% of something, but now you dive a little deeper to pass that certification exam, you learn more.
100%.
So I kind of use them that way. So even if you don't take the certification, buy the book for it and go through it, learn the material.
Yep.
So some of these certifications are expensive, ridiculously expensive.
Yes.
Not ours, but a lot of the competition. But you know, you don't. It's about the knowledge. It's not about the piece of paper. Because at the end of the day, you need something to get you into the door. You know, with your resume, and it's probably not the certification that's going to do it.
Good answer. Good answer. So yeah, I will plug our free tier at TCM Security though. We've got like over 30 hours of courses now. And it's not like free trial or
No,
no
they're
credit
really
card.
good courses.
Yeah, no credit card, nothing. They're as high quality as all of our other courses, videos, hands-on labs, quizzes, everything you would expect from a high quality paid course. 100% free. Just the email to sign up. That's it. So, all righty. We got another question here. This is a good one. So, asking for tips outside of just keeping software up to date, is there anything we recommend or software which is open source or free? So I have a couple tips outside. This is for personal, like I'm going to answer this maybe from a personal suggestion, which is yes, keeping software up to date is one of the top three things I say to people. No reusing passwords. So use a password manager. So free or open source, there's a few of them. I usually suggest Keeper. That we have a relationship with them at TCM, but I've actually been using Keeper personally and paying for it. Their paid version for a lot longer than I've worked at TCM. So password manager, and then I use MFA. So that's multi-factor authentication personally on everything that allows it. I prefer to use an application over cell phone, if possible, cell number, SMS, but I'll take SMS or even if it's just email, it's the only option. So those are the top three. And like I made a video about this actually recently because I was a target of a very advanced phishing attack that I did not fully fall for, but I can't remember the last time I like actually was like, oh yeah, I'm excited about this. And if I had have fallen for this phishing attack, the damage of it would have been very, very limited because it probably actually would have really done nothing other than me needing to change my password because of MFA and no password reuse. But if I didn't, it would actually have been a really big deal. So those are my
Yeah.
top three. And the authenticator apps are all free. Google has
Yeah,
one.
and
That's the one I use. And yeah.
I'll just add to that. Like, I work with the TCM pen testing team, and so Aaron, who runs the team, sent me a list of the top 5 findings across what we're seeing in the industry now. And lack of MFA and poor passwords, have definitely made that list. So
Yeah.
I argue with a friend of mine all the time who uses Chrome to store all of his passwords, and I'm like,
Yeah.
please just use Bitwarden or something. Like this is not safe for you to do. Yeah, unique passwords. Find a password manager that you're comfortable with and use that. Absolutely. Use multi-factor authentication on everything, not some things, but everything. And just make sure that all of your key accounts have strong passwords, have MFA enabled, and
Yeah.
you don't have to
It's
change them frequently, but you have to keep an eye on these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting. There, I think, have been some bad suggestions for password practices that are like kind of being changed now because NIST was like, hey, this is actually, we shouldn't be forcing people to change their password every 3 months for no reason. Instead, they need to make a really strong and unique one. And that's better. And I've always said that as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
forcing password changes just cuz is it does more harm in my opinion than good. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
the issue is you could have a very strong password,
Yeah.
and it's funny. When I worked for another company, this was a bunch of years ago, and TCM came in and did pen test for us, and they took
Mhm.
our AD credentials, and we had people with like 18 character passwords that were identified. And
Yep.
the way that happens is because you reuse a very strong
Yes.
password over and over
Yep.
again.
And
Sooner
it
or
gets
later, you
breached.
end up it being breached, and then yeah, it doesn't help you. So they have
No.
to be unique, and they have to
Unique.
be,
Yep.
strong. And in order for you to remember all of that, you really need that password manager.
Yep. You know, this might be controversial, but I see these posts about people saying this is the dumbest thing ever. This product should not exist. Of password books, like writing them down. And so if you're in a business setting, then no, do not do this at your desk or in your office. But um, for a lot of people, especially elderly people, I would much rather them write all their passwords in a book that they keep in their office drawer or whatever, as opposed to using the same password for their Facebook, their bank, their everything, right? It all comes down to like what risks are you seeing, and what's your threats, right? But a long time ago I used to use LastPass, and I mean, not saying that using password manager is bad, but LastPass was breached. I remember when they told me, and they were like, depending on how strong your master password is, all your passwords might be out there. Um, the amount of times my office has been broken into is zero, right? And if someone breaks into your office, they're not looking for your password book. So, in a business environment, yeah, you're going to get in trouble for that. And that's a bad idea. Don't put it on sticky notes or
No
something.
sticky.
But yeah, for individual use, and especially people where the option is reusing passwords or writing them down in a book, I would say write them down in a book and put them in your desk if it's personal use like that.
Yeah, and I do think the key is to have different passwords and multi-factor authentication for all of
Yeah.
your important accounts at the very least. And this is especially important for the elderly. Like I watch my mother, and I mean, she can get scammed.
Oh yeah.
She asks me all the time, "I got this thing. Is this legit?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"No." So at least she asks. But if you don't have anybody to ask, what do you do? Like, how many people fall for these things? And if you
Yeah.
do have your account secured and secured well, they're not getting it.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, here's a follow-up question to this. So I think this is good to talk about a little bit, but we've got how, someone asking then how can forcing a password change on people every 3 months be bad? So the few reasons that I see, for example, NIST, which a lot of people follow NIST guidelines. So when they change, this is when I saw a lot of companies doing this, but it makes people do bad password practices because they can't remember. So they either just keep making them simple because they got to keep changing them, or they start writing them down. I mean, on sticky pads or things like that under the keyboard. Or they start doing things like, oh, well, now it's October 25. So my password's going to be October 25, and then we'll switch it to winter 2025 or whatever. Right. So the reasoning behind how forcing password changes can be bad is that, yeah, it makes people do bad password practices. They don't feel like updating their password manager now again. So then they don't put it in it when, if they just set it up properly and secure once, then they're good to go. So that's the reasoning behind that, at least that
Yeah.
I know of. I don't know if you have anything to add to it.
I do. So first of all, I think you should do a video on the tools we use for password cracking and how
Yes.
smart they are today. So for example, when I worked going back 10 years where I did have to change my password frequently, my password was basically the same. Let's just say it was
Yep.
elephant one, and then it
Yep.
became elephant two, and then it was three,
I've
and
done
then
it
it was
too.
four, and
Yep.
then it was five. And so, yeah, it satisfies the uniqueness
Yep.
aspect, and it gets through, for me to update it, and then I can remember it. So I didn't need a password manager. But the problem
Yep.
with that is a lot of these tools will already take that into account. So they
Yes.
see that those numbers and patterns, and they
Yep.
will, find it. So
Yep.
it's basically like you've never changed your password at all.
Yep. And that was the thing, is I did that too. Just incremented the number, and People know that. And so when you're cracking passwords, you need capital letter. Well, where are you going to put your capital letter? It's going to be your first one. You need a punctuation. Where are you going to put that?
Exclamation on the
Probably
end.
exclamation on the end, or you're going to replace an A with an at, and you need some numbers. Where are you going to put those? So you're probably going to do word, capital at the front, numbers, exclamation mark. So, and when you're attacking an organization, you don't need to get everyone's password, right? You just need a couple or one or two.
Yeah.
And so many people are doing that. So, yeah, forcing people to change it every 3 months did more harm than not. So that's that. That's the reasoning. Hopefully that makes sense. And if your company is making you change your passwords, then I forget what NIST is, but if you Google NIST password change, and then you should show that, you could show that to your cybersecurity or IT team and have them potentially consider.
This is off the top of my head, so I could be wrong, but I think it's 800-153.
It sounds about right.
It's either 800-153 or 171. I don't remember exactly which. But
there we go. Okay, we got some more questions here, so let's go through. If anyone else has questions as well, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We are here to answer them. Okay, in your opinion or point of view, would you advise someone who has a diploma already in cybersecurity to pursue a master's or work on certifications?
that's a good question. I took the master's route and the certifications route. I mean, so honestly, I think the master's is a good way to go, but it really isn't going to teach you anything that the CISSP is going to teach you. They're basically the same. But some certifications do kind of branch out a little bit into different areas.
Yes.
And so it's good to see how those things are done, or how you should, or how this certification body thinks you should do certain things. So I think you need a mix of both. Whether or not you really need a master's is, I don't know. I would question that.
Yeah, me too as well, especially with already having a degree. But I always bring this back to the same answer. And I think sometimes people get tired of me telling them this when they think there's some secret or whatever, but it's go look at the job postings for the jobs you want and what are the requirements, because that's what the hiring managers or the recruiters or the AI that reviews your resume is going to look at. So if you're not seeing masters on those, then I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be a good use of your money or your time. Whereas if you are seeing the same certifications over and over again, which you probably will, go for if that's your goal, is to get employed, which right now I know it's a tricky job market and a lot of people are shooting to get tech jobs, then yeah, because that's what your competition is going to have. For your strongest competition is they'll have most of or all of the certs or things that they're looking for. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. Not that master's is not bad. I've always thought about going back and getting a master's myself, but it would be more for personal reasons than for employability. All right, that was a good question. Okay. Here's one for you, Alex. We talked about this at the start of the webinar, but I think it's a really important one. So what are some best practices for using AI tools in organizations effectively while also staying compliant? Does it mean that organizations have to or should develop their own homegrown AI for everything to control their own data?
No, but I think the first step is to kind of identify how your data is going to be used by that AI. So if you pick, let's say, ChatGPT, you better review that privacy policy and be okay with that. Everything at the end of the day boils down to risk and how much of that risk you're expecting to absorb, or how much of that is okay. So if you're okay as an organization with ChatGPT learning on your data and potentially spitting out, what it learned from you to somebody else not in your organization, then, you could use any one of those tools. So it doesn't mean that you have to build everything in-house. On the other hand, if you're risk averse and you don't want to accept any of that, then yeah, you're going to need your own model before you can roll something out within the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is not a unique problem. Like this is on the minds of a lot of people. So there are products that are going to be offered that are going to make you compliant to, whatever you need to be, whatever that is. So you just need to make sure, yeah, you do your due diligence and that GRC to you're probably going to need not just, your cybersecurity, but legal involved if you're big enough to say, yeah, these are requirements. This is what we need to be compliant. And then I actually think it's better to give your employees a tool that you're comfortable with and that you have vetted and you're making sure is in your compliance, whether that's Copilot because you're already using Office and, Microsoft has the different levels of, are you in government or, do you need all your data stored in the US or whatever, right? So, yeah, pick a tool, vet it, make sure it meets your compliance requirements, you're comfortable with all of that, make that your approved tool for your organization and let your employees use it and make it frictionless because otherwise, yeah, some of them are probably going to use the free chat GPTs or whatever. So yeah. And seeing in the chat here, like some companies have all AI tools banned. And yeah, 100%. I was working at a company where that was the case as well. So if you're going to go that route, you better make sure you have good training and other tools in place to catch their use if that's what your risk level and appetite is. But yeah, this goes to like all other tools and things like that. If you create too
Yeah.
much friction in IT for your users and you don't give them really good, solid reasoning and training, then people are going to use other tools. It's going to be shadow IT, right? So if your security and IT are causing too much friction, it's almost going to make it worse.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I was at a place where it was banned, and there was a lot of training involved to let us know why and what the reasoning was. And it's not just, we're scared or it's easier to say no. And then I know they were slowly rolling out tools that were compliant because, yeah, people will start to use it on their personal laptops, even. They'll open it up beside them if they work from home, on their phone, whatever, right? So better to reduce that friction. But yeah, very
Yeah.
good question. Going to be on the top of the mind a lot, I think, for people. So, okay. We are, looks like we're out of questions for now. I know we've been going on for an hour. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to drop them in. We can try and hit them now. I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to mention before we pass it back to Mariella.
No, I mean, I'm excited for 2026. Every year things tend to get a little bit better, in terms of, especially AI. I think
Mm-hmm.
AI is one area to watch, but there's obviously other areas as well. Everything, um, you have to take a little bit of everything and to have a cohesive program. So, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this. Great questions today, and we need to do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was good chatting and some very good questions from the folks that joined in. So thank you, everyone. I think Mariella, you mentioned you had some closing statements you want to do, so we'll pass it back over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you both so much, Alex and Andrew. This was a lot of fantastic info, and I just wanted to thank our amazing audience too. They went above and beyond and asked some really great questions and gave us a lot of great feedback. So I wanted to thank them so much for joining us today. If they want any additional information on this topic, they can always visit us at educate360.com or tcmsecurity.com. And if you missed out on any part of this session, we will absolutely be sharing a recording with you in an email after the webinar with a fun little download resource for how to mitigate AI threats in 2025 and beyond. So thank you all again for joining us, and thank you both so much for your expertise, as always.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Alrighty, thanks everyone. See you all soon. Have a great rest of your week. Bye for now.